Yeah, I just got to this point. I think humans are boring. I'm just going to write non-human protagonists. So,
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fanty Show.
Oh, Murderbot, Murderbot, murder, 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 Murderbot, bot.
Is everyone you do now, Paul? Wait, hold on. Is everyone you do?
I've done that one since the first novella came out.
Okay, right, but you've now done a thing where everyone now does the tagline as a musical number. You've made that happen this year.
Oops, sorry.
That's okay. Right. Well, I'm Sean.
I'm Paul.
And tonight, we're joined by a very special guest who is actually returning after not being on the show in a very long time. That would be Martha Wells. Welcome to the show, Martha.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, Martha Wells is the best-selling, acclaimed author of SFF works, including the books of the Raksura series, the Orion series, the Murderbot Diaries series, and other novels, including 2023's Witch King, whose sequel, Queen Demon, comes out from Tor this October.
Martha has also written media tie-in for Star Wars, Stargate Atlantis, Magic the Gathering, short fiction, YA novels, which we're going to talk about today, and nonfiction. Martha's won Nebula Awards, Hugo Awards, Locus Awards, and so many more, with her books being published in 30 languages.
So tonight, Martha is here to talk to us about primarily the Murderbot Diaries, which is the basis for the new Apple TV Plus series that is currently running at the time of this recording. 3 episodes are out. A 4th is forthcoming that she is a consulting producer on, as well as the YA fantasy Amanuensis stories that is being newly reprinted together by Tor, which would be this beautiful thing for anyone watching the video today. So thank you very much for being here, Martha, and being willing to talk about all of these things with us.
Well, thank you. It's great to talk to you guys again here.
I believe last time we talked to you, Murderbot had come out.
No, it hadn't. It was Murderbot came out in 2017.
It was 2016 at Convergence that we talked.
Yeah, that's the first time we did the podcast like outside.
Yes.
Area.
Right over by the loading dock. Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's how you do it at conventions with a little recorder. Yeah, it was very excining. Well, Paul, there's one last thing in the script before we get to discussion.
I know. I didn't want to step on our reminiscing. Before we get into our discussion, a reminder to our listeners to please share your questions and comments with us at skiffyandthefanty.com. So share suggestions, or you can blast them right in the chat as we're talking. If you're not already, join us on Twitch for Sean's Alphabet streams every Friday at 7 p.m. Central to be a part of our live streaming format and watch these things live. If you can, review and spread the word about our show. You can support us on Patreon, be part of our Twitch cinema polls, live watches, and other Patreon events on Discord. We are all over the place. Come join us.
Absolutely.
Back to you, Sean.
Okay, so the first question I wanted to talk to you about is like a big question about career, because at this moment, you have released, I believe, 21 novels, several collections, several novellas, 5 of which are from the Murderbot Diaries, numerous short stories. You've written for, as Paul was mentioning earlier, major franchises, and obviously have had a very massive series, and now having re-releases of some of your earlier work. And so I wanted to start with a kind of question about, like, thinking about your career thus far. What's kind of stands out for you about where you are now?
I'm pretty well off now. That's kind of what stands out for me about it. It's just been a long road to get here, and it's been really up and down. So yeah, it's been there was one big long time where I thought I was gonna have to, basically give up any hope of getting published again. So it's really wild to me to be at this point here with an actual TV show happening.
You started, if I'm correct, 1993.
1993, my first book came out.
That puts it at that's a long career.
Yeah, it's 20. It was about 27 years when, as we all try to do math in our heads.
Oh God, that's hard.
Uh, it's about 30 years, I think.
Yeah, it's a good chunk of time.
Yeah.
You'd mentioned kind of the difficulties, those the really sad statement about like thinking you might have to give up, and now you're in, as you say, right, a much better spot. How do you kind of feel about like the future, like where you're gonna go from this moment?
I don't know. I think the fact that the future is so uncertain right now for everything, uh, it's kind of hard to say. I'm just going to keep writing books, and hopefully we'll be able to keep doing the show, and that's basically my big hope right now.
So we do have a question in chat that already came up,
Yep.
which is from Configuration Queen. And it's relevant to us talking about sort of your career here, which would be thinking back to some of your older books. Which one do you hope that readers will try?
I really hope they try either. I mean, it's not an older book. I hope people try Witch King because it's my favorite right now. And I hope people try the books of the Raksura.
Yeah.
My favorite for a long time.
Very good ones.
For listeners who don't know, I liked the Raksura so much I stole them and stuck them into a role playing game scenario I was running because it's like, these are great. This is wonderful world building. I can make use of this. Oops.
It's fun.
So let's turn to the big franchise at the moment, because this is the one that's on the TV. And I'll bring out this omnibus edition, which has the first two novellas, which obviously has the nice little Apple TV Plus logo on it, which was very, very fun when it came in. So I want to start kind of with another broad question, which would be thinking about the fact that with a TV show, there are going to be people who've never heard of the books before who are going to see the show and go, okay, well, what the heck is this based on? Because it's based on a thing. And they may come to read it. And so I guess my question is, for those folks who may come to it for the first time, maybe kind of give them a quick beat of what these stories are, and what do you think their takeaway might be in approaching these works for the first time? Because they are a little bit different than the show, obviously.
I think it depends on whether there's already science fiction readers or not. Because I think if you're a science fiction reader, it's pretty easy to get into. If you're not, I've seen a lot of people say that they think that that you don't have to be really immersed in the genre to understand it. And I think that's one thing people that aren't genre readers are kind of hesitant about. They think they're going to have to know all this stuff to get into a story, as opposed to no, the stories usually tell you all the stuff you need to know to get into them. There's no prior knowledge. And I think most people are familiar with the idea of, uh, sentient robots and that kind of thing. So I think it'll be pretty easy for people to get into, especially if they've watched the show. So I think that the books will be pretty easy to get into.
Some people are saying in chat they recommend it even for non-SF readers, which
yeah.
I actually kind of agree with. I think they're good gateway books. I think it's because even though your main character, your POV character, is literally, a sentient, robotic, semi-organic being, you can get a lot about their character and about what makes them tick just by being in their mind.
Oh yeah, and it was funny when All Systems Red first came out, it got labeled a lot as robot horror because of the cover and scary robot, faceless, that kind of thing. But that was intentional on Tor's part, the art director's part, is that, that's the face Murderbot shows to the world. And then as soon as you read the first paragraph, you can't ever see it that way again.
And that's interesting because I want to talk about the show for a moment. So, well, I've watched the first two episodes. I haven't got to watch episode 3 yet. And the tone that hits me, especially like with the theme music, is straight up science fiction comedy. Is that intentional? I mean, yes, there's humor in the Murderbot novellas, but it feels like this show is pitched as we're going to go for the comedy right out of the gate.
I think I don't think they pitched it as comedy. In the beginning, but I think I'm really funny. And I think the books there's an undercurrent of really bitter humor and sarcasm that runs through the books. And it's hard to put that in the show, well, I think, without it being labeled as comedy.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. There are aspects of Murderbot that are deeply funny. The character. This is part of one of the things I wanted to ask you about was sort of like writing Murderbot's sort of internal self. Especially as we go through multiple novellas, you kind of develop that over time and have Murderbot sort of think about who they are, what makes them tick, what makes them different from other people, but also start to sort of realize their personhood to a greater degree. And one aspect of that is like Murderbot has very specific, very funny quirks. Like the cereals, being obsessed with the cereals and literally sharing, like in the second novella, with art, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just kind of it's when it's in terrible situations, it's basically finding everything just bitterly hilarious the whole time. And it does I think gradually expand its awareness because its world has been so narrow, and I was trying to get that across in All Systems Red. And as the novellas go along, it starts to really expand that a little bit. And one person pointed out that in, I think it's Rogue Protocol, you start to see it critique the shows it's watching a little bit more, and sort of barely start to visualize the idea, well, if I was in that show, this is how it would have gone, and start to kind of like really think of itself as, a person that would be in this situation. And to the point where we get to system collapse of actually using media to solve the problem, basically. I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read it, but yeah, so it very definitely changes over the course of the books.
Were there particular difficulties in sort of, because Murderbot, I think it'd be fair to say, even from the first book, has lots of qualities we'd recognize as ones humans have, but also is very distinctly different from humans in some ways. As you were developing the character, did you find any sort of particular difficulties or maybe eccentricities in the writing process about developing that character?
Not really. It is a very difficult character to write because of having to being able to see through all the security cameras and pull information from all these systems. It makes like basically a fight scene so much more complicated to write. And I think the thing that illustrates it the best is in Fugitive Telemetry. And I had problems when I was writing it because I realized it's basically a murder mystery. And at first I was trying to have Murderbot solve the mystery like a human would, going to talk to people and that kind of thing. And then I realized that's not what it would do. It would solve the mystery like a machine intelligence would with a database. It's like, let's just eliminate, however many thousands of suspects we have by figuring out that they weren't in a place where, they could commit the murder, and that's because databases, that's kind of their first step for solving problems.
That reminds me of the thing, I don't know what they call those when you're a kid in school and they give you like the list of different attributes of a people or whatever, like so and so was here but likes blue or whatever, and you have to put them on like a chart to figure out where people fit. That's, I don't know what that's called, but you're reminding me of that in my head.
You mean like the Five Houses problem? I remember from Omni magazine, like this isn't this and this isn't this, and you have to sort it out. Murderbot would be perfect at that puzzle.
Yeah.
We didn't have that when I was a kid. We were just like had rocks and sticks to get together. We didn't have these advanced learning methods.
I don't know if I'd call them advanced. I think I don't know what you would call them. They stopped doing it, I think, by the time I hit middle school. So I don't know if they were just high on the idea of logic, or I don't know. It was
It
fun
was
though.
it was an educational phase, Sean. I caught the beginning of it, and you caught the end of it, I think. Well, we have a question from chat. What are the chances? This is from Mighty Merv Lafferty. What are the chances of spin-off shows like Sanctuary Moon?
I actually don't think that's too high a chance because of the way they're doing it. I think it's more like a chance to get guest actors in to do something really that they haven't ever done before that's a bit over the top. I don't think that would work as a whole show. It's kind of like trying to do a Star Trek parody as an actual series, where pretty soon you end up just doing, you know, you're just doing Star
You're doing the shit.
with maybe more
The Orville,
or something.
right? The Orville's exactly like that. It starts off as Star Trek parody, but it turns straight.
Why am I watching this? Why can't I just go watch Star Trek? So
Yeah, I get what you mean. Well, that is an interesting thing. I don't think I've seen you be asked this, but it probably has. But I'm curious now since we're talking about them. Where did the idea for these serials kind of come from? I mean, there's some obvious analogs, but sort of inserting them into the story. Where did you kind of develop that idea?
well, having Murderbot, you know, want to watch basically entertainment instead of killing people was pretty much the base idea for the story. Excuse me. And working with that, it just felt natural that it would start referring to actual episodes and everything. And then watching different stuff. And I was really glad in the series they got some of that in at the beginning. I think Strife in the Galaxy is one they made up. I don't think they mentioned, yeah, Med Center Argala is in there, which I love that one. And a couple others I think were actually from me, but yeah, I think they made up Strife in the Galaxy. But it feels very natural that if you have that much of a relationship with entertainment stuff, you're going to refer to it and talk about it. And I think that's kind of one thing we kind of miss a lot in fantasy and science fiction. I remember just watching The Lord of the Rings and being startled. They show a scene in Rivendell where Aragorn's reading a book. And I think when one of the first scenes of Frodo, he's sitting there reading. And it's like, oh yeah, these people have books. And so few fantasies show people doing that. Books are only like magical things. You don't see people sitting around reading novels, even though throughout most historical periods, people did read. People did have novels. So yeah, so it's and in science fiction stuff, you might see like a news clip or something, but you so very rarely see any kind of entertainment. And when you really think about our lives, it's such an important part of our lives. The books we read, the shows we watch, and it's just odd that we don't see that very much in science fiction and fantasy.
There's another element to that too, I think, which is Murderbot is very obviously a fan as well. I think rereading the first three novellas, the number of times it's mentioned that Murderbot has like rewatched things or started over from the beginning or gone back or that isn't something one does that isn't in some way feeling connected to the work, right? That's a fan's activity.
That's fanish activity.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one reason why I really hope we get a second season is we can continue that story from Sanctuary Moon that's going to be ongoing through this first season.
Do you mean specifically the captain who was it? No, I think that's World Hoppers maybe, but the captain I think in the first episode who gets like accused on this ship of possibly having a relationship with the bot.
Yeah, John Cho, and that I remember just when I got to that point in the scripts, just kind of rolling over laughing because it goes in such unexpected directions. Let's put it that way. And so I'd really like to be able to see them. I know there's more of that story, and I really hope that they can continue it.
It's pretty fun. I'm really enjoying the show. I really liked how much they caught one of the things I found so interesting about the character of the books, where Alexander Skarsgård really captures that discomfortness of sort of not knowing where to look, and that is very plainly presented on the character's face. And it's very similar throughout the books, right? There's so many aspects of human interaction that Murderbot really struggles with, which I found really interesting. And I think some folks are using language like neurospicy, and I've seen people talk about Murderbot as sort of a neuroatypical character. And I don't know if that was your intention in writing the character, but it seems to have struck a chord.
Yeah, well, it wasn't my intention. It's just that's just how my mind works, which is, I've realized over time, and there's not much I can do about it apparently. But I really think he really nails that aspect of Murderbot. And just I was noticing just the way he walks in the suit, and it just really it's not you can tell it's not a normal human in there. The
Yeah.
physical acting is just incredible.
I think it's key, right, to the story. You have to get this character, the feeling. It has to feel.
Yeah,
like
their
Murderbot.
discomfort. Their utter discomfort being around these humans. Like, don't make eye contact. Don't make contact.
Don't make eye contact.
And it just gets better. I thought. And especially, I loved all the casting, but especially, I think that if they didn't get Murderbot right, it wouldn't have worked, and if they didn't get Dr. Mensa right, it wouldn't have worked. And she, Noma Dumezweni, is just perfect.
I agree. Yeah, I thought her character I just thought was honestly adorable. I just really immediately loved her from the second she appears. The actress has done, I think, a really good job with that character.
Well, yeah, and I was kind of realizing just from her performance that the core of the story doesn't work unless you can tell, unless as a reader you're a little bit in love with Mensa, and she's really nailing that part because I think you just fall in love with her immediately.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a
You're
huge part of All Systems Red. Yeah.
Yeah, you're supposed to care about these poor scientists way out of their depth on a planet they're not prepared for, and only Murderbot keeping them from utter devastation. Yeah, if you don't care about them, you don't care about the story. So yeah. So I think the show conveys that from the book quite nicely.
It is interesting I've said this a couple of times in my conversation. I taught the All Systems Red, which I set off podcasts, and so for folks to know, and I'm teaching it again in my semester that starts very, very soon here over the summer. So it'll be actually the third time teaching it in a row. So it'd be interesting to see what this third batch thinks. But one of the things that my students really caught on to was that All Systems Red, and I think this holds true for almost all of the novellas, is like a deceptively simple story, right? Plot-wise, its plot is not an overly complex plot, not as an insult. It's just that the complexity of the story is in the characters and reading them. And in some ways, it made me really curious in thinking about these books, because science fiction is known for often being very plot-driven. And I would say All Systems Red at its core technically is a plot-driven story. And yet, the thing where the most depth and development occurs is almost at that very specific character level. And I was kind of curious how your view and kind of looking, you've done all of these now, and you can look back on them and thinking about how character seems to have come sort of very much forward in these works, and if that kind of aligns with how you thought about them as you were working on them.
Yeah, I think in general, I don't know, the way I read, I don't care as much about the plot as I do what the characters think and feel about what's happening in the plot. So I think that's how the reader knows what to think and feel about it. And so Murderbot is kind of, that's your primary interest in it, is what does Murderbot think about what it's doing and what's going on. So yeah, and just some of the plots really hinge around, is Murderbot going to be able to get along with these other characters, and how are they going to be able to interact? and its expectation of what's going to happen versus what actually happens. And it's not so much an unreliable narrator as it is constantly sort of pessimistic about everything that might happen. So yeah, and I don't think also I think some people are just not willing to engage with the fact that the story's dealing with slavery and that it's a slave narrative. Because I see reviewers try to say things like, well, why does Murderbot not like humans? They're so nice to it, and just sort of
Mm-hmm.
wanting to engage with that. And I think also the ideas of the social anxiety and that kind of thing, of not really sort of getting why that's an actual problem. And I think that surface reading is basically people who don't have those kind of problems not really understanding what they're reading. So, not in a bad way. It's just that they're just not going below the surface.
My students, absolutely, some of them picked up on those things. I mean, when I mentioned the sort of neuroatypical reading, that there's a bunch of academic papers that have taken this view too, and a bunch of them went, yeah, I got that immediately. And I suspect because they themselves have some aspects of Murderbot's sort of character.
I mean, yeah, there's a whole wealth of things that you interrogate in these books that people seem to be lied over. Focusing on Murderbot as a character and not seeing the anti-slavery themes or the anti-corporate themes or commercial exploitation. There's a number of things you bring through these books again and again, but you're not. But you're grounding it in in the story of Murderbot and their growth, and so kind of you're almost hiding the vegetables inside the tasty meat of Murderbot's story.
Yeah, but I do think it's really the anti-corporate stuff is really obvious. So it's really funny when people are just I see readings of it where people seem to think that I put it in there accidentally. And it's sort of like how the whole world is based on the fact that corporations are terrible. This world wouldn't exist without, basically unchecked greed and exploitation. So it is kind of baked in there.
That is interesting because there are sort of multiple prongs of that sort of critical element in throughout the novellas and stories of this the very fact that we can have these non-corporate worlds, right, which as a meaningful distinction in this story, I think is should be the giveaway, right? That there is a very clear societal demarcation between the things that are the corporate worlds and the things that are not. And what we see between them, and I think the show is capturing some of that too, is the way that those cultures like operate. There's a level of bureaucracy, especially in All Systems Red. There's like a level of bureaucracy that exists in the corporate worlds that you don't see in like Preservation, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. And preservation's whole structure is so very different. The fact that Mensa as basically as part of being a leader has to go on at least one of these expeditions and has probably done more of them, yeah, than that. And I really think that it was really one of the things that they did I really liked was bringing out, showing how different preservation was in just the way the characters interact with each other. Because in a lot of recent sci-fi, science fiction shows, it feels like it's a very dark, gritty world. And someone actually pointed out how Murderbot starts out in the mining colony where it looks like one of those shows. It's very dark and gritty. And then it goes into the people being with the people preservation and everything's colorful and people aren't mistrustful of each other. People actually like each other. They know each other. They trust each other. They're physically affectionate with each other. And I think that's one reason why people feel like it's so different. It's not just the humor, but the fact that you're not watching people who are sort of gritty survivors of this dystopian dark world. It's sort of They're just like ordinary people you might know, that you would have a lot in common with.
Yeah, that's a huge contrast I noticed in the story too, where you're right, that opening sequence in the mine versus like the first time they show up in the like corporate facility they've given them on the planet. Uh, it I found it interesting. They're both very animated, but I also noticed that in the opening sequence, it's rather violent in its presentation, and that is the exact opposite. So it is physical in the first, but it's like physical violence, right? Like one of them literally burns his hand in a scene, versus like laughter and like almost like they're running like children running up the stairs. And yeah,
Like dibs on the big bedroom, or and all that kind of
Exactly.
yeah.
it's very very clever visual writing. I think they have done
Oh
that's
yeah.
been done there.
Yeah, they did a fantastic job with that, and it's just I there's so much what I kind of want to talk about, but I don't want to spoil it. To keep remembering, everybody's only seen up to episode 3.
Oh, because you much further along. That's right.
Yes.
Thing like many times, basically. I don't know
Oh
how.
wow.
Yeah, I saw it in well, I saw some scenes being filmed, or one scene being filmed, and then I saw the production part where it's just the things they've filmed cut together in the right order, and it's basically like a draft version, and no special effects, or the special effects are just kind of in there again as draft versions where they're like slightly animated and stuff, and you can see like the parking lot at the location. It's like we're looking at this vista, and there's the catering truck. It's all right there, and like the people holding the green screen and things like that. And it's got like a draft version of the music and everything, and it had they were still working on the voiceover. So sometimes the voiceover was Alexander Skarsgård, and sometimes it was one of the editors, and sometimes it was Paul Weitz, and because they were working on that. And so I've seen that version like probably 20 times because we were watching it over and over. And then I've seen the post-production with all the color and sound corrected, and the special effects and the real music and everything, um and the credits. I've seen the credits. They sent me the link for the credit sequence once that was done. So yeah, I've seen the whole thing already. And I've read the scripts too, but it's like the scripts, I read at least 3 versions of the scripts, including like the latest one. But that really, so much of it is in the direction and the performances. So reading the script doesn't, I think, unless you're really good at that, it doesn't give you a really good visualization of what the show's going to look like.
It's kind of like reading a theater play. I mean, you have all the stage directions. Unless you can visualize that, it's not the same thing as actually seeing that actually on stage.
Yeah, yeah, or reading a transcript of something, and then you actually see the people as they're talking, and it's just completely different from what you had in your head.
Yeah, because the emotion and the physicality is missing.
Yes.
Curiously, that is a Murderbot thing too. We keep getting his internal dialogue. What Murderbot thinks, what they think, and Murderbot doesn't move as much until book novella 2, I think, artificial condition, when they like program some like try to be more human as they
Yeah.
walk.
Yeah. What to do with their arms, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because turns out humans super animated and like all of our stuff moves. We're like octopi.
Yes, all the time. Until you get really nervous and you do forget you don't know what to do with your arms. They're just hanging there.
Yeah, that's true.
Let us jump to Steampunk YA at this point.
So this is the re-release of the 2 Amelie adventure stories, The Hollow World and The Sky World, which came out a little while ago. I guess for folks that may be reapproaching this or kind of start from the same place, could you tell us a little bit about these particular works?
Yeah, they're fantasy novels with a very young protagonist in early teens, and she kind of stumbles onto a scientific expedition. It's not set on Earth, it's a secondary world, and that has very different physics from ours. And she stumbles onto a scientific expedition that's going to below the sea bottom to this inner world and to rescue a previous expedition, and meets strange people and strange creatures, and has much adventure. And then there's the sequel, The Sky World, which is where they see something coming through the
The ether, yeah.
the ether, basically, yeah, towards them, and have to go up and investigate it. But they're a lot of fun to write. I wrote them for a defunct fantasy and science fiction line. I guess it was maybe 2015, 2014, I think, and it was a while back. And they'd been out of print for years and years. So it's really nice to have.
Yeah, they were 2013.
2013, okay. And I revised both of them, and it was really neat to have them out in the new edition too.
I was going to ask that whether this new combined edition had any revisions, because I know you've done revisions to City of Bones and a couple of the other books that have been re-released. I was wondering if these were revised as well, and if so, how did you revise them?
The first one, not that much, I think, but I kind of bringing him in line with I feel like my skill level as a writer has improved since 2013. So it's kind of bringing them more in line with that. And the Sky World, I think, needed more work than the Hollow World, probably because I remember when I was working on it, I had to stop in the middle of it and write the Star Wars novel. And so,
Right.
and then go back to it. So I think parts of it were a little rushed. So I was glad to have a chance to actually go and revise it.
So it sounds like Skyworld might have gotten a bit more attention then by comparison.
Yeah, probably. I wrote, basically, it was during my career crash that I wrote it. There was like, I think it was about from 2007 to 2009. I just couldn't sell anything, but I ended up writing The Cloud Roads, The Serpent Sea, and then Emily and the Hollow World. So it was nice that all those books eventually sold.
Wow, so that really does explain sort of earlier when you were talking about your career, that feeling of like, is this the end?
Yeah, I remember those days. It's like, oh, please let these books be good. Please let these books be good. Please, please, people, buy Arthur's books. I want more Arthur's books, because I had started reading your work with Death and the Necromancer because it had been up for a Nebula, and I was in that phase, like, if it's on the Nebula list, I must read it. Like, I don't know this author. I'll read this book. Okay? There was a prequel. There was Element of Fire. I'll read that too. And then City of Bones. And then just kept going forward with you ever since. So I can't say I was there with you in 1993, but, I had to go looking for a used copy of Element of Fire because it was out of print by the time I got around to it.
You could.
So why YA
ahead,
and steampunk together for the Emil books? It's an unusual combination. You don't see. I can't really think of one other author that's even tried something like that, and that would be Ian McDonald's Everness series. It's the only other one I can think of that kind of tries to hit that combination.
Well, I didn't really think of it at the time as steampunk. I kind of really liked that sort of pseudoscience adventure, like almost like an earlier version of Johnny Quest, and some of the earlier Disney movies would get that. And that's the thing I really liked, is kind of going to explore some strange place, and you're, with your sort of scientific
Found family.
yeah, and your whole family. So that's what I was really trying to go for, that feel. And it doesn't have a lot of the characteristics, like nobody's wears goggles kind of things. So, which was really big at the time. So I didn't really think of it as steampunk, I think. It was always also like the Illyrian trilogy is a bit like that, where they have their version of science, which doesn't really match, is sort of semi-based on magic, so it doesn't really match our version of science. And that's kind of something I'd already worked with before.
Yeah, the Illyrian, you start with Element of Fire, which is very much sword and sorcery, and then by the time you get to the wizard hunters, you're kind of dealing with science as quasi technology by that point when they have the invasion. To come to think of it, so the Emil books are kind of like going to other worlds and having other worlds contact them, which kind of reminds me of the Wizard Hunters, where you have multiplicity of worlds impinging upon Ilrain.
Yeah, and Element of Fire, the magic is very based on 17th century magical beliefs, which have it's like all these it's all these instructions, do this, do that, put this here, and then you'll have magic. And it doesn't work, but they were very convinced that this is the way you did it. And just kind of that sort of like the idea of alchemy and if you just do these things in the right way, then the magic will happen. Those kind of beliefs.
It does help if you have a half-fae quasi-protagonist like Kate Carrion around, though, because she can do magic for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, the fairy stuff was really fun to write too. I think it's Catherine Briggs. It's like a guide to fairyland where it's based or encyclopedia of fairy where it's all the different types of fae and what from the different legends and everything. And that was a resource I drew a lot from.
It feels like I didn't mean to turn this to an Ilrain podcast. Sorry, Sean, but it feels like there's like a diminishment of fairy from Element of Fire all the way through Death of the Necromancer. There's not a lot that kind of like getting further and further away, and you don't see them all at the Wizard Hunt. It's almost like a diminishment of fairy from the world of Ilrain across those books.
Yeah, because the fairies were pretty, did try to kill them all. So
yeah, well, yeah, fair.
So yeah. So in their terms, it's like sort of like us trying to eradicate polio or measles or something. It's like these things got to go. You do see I think in it's the Gate of Gods when they get back to Ilrian, Tremaine runs into a redcap in the forest when they're getting ready to try to get in. And she basically it says something to her, and I can't remember what it is, and she's like, "I've got a gun," and then it leaves. So yeah, they're still around, just the kind of pushed into the back corners and not trying to like destroy entire cities.
Whereas in the Raksura novels, you have this whole palimpsest of different civilizations, different magics, different technologies, and every so often something from the deep past pops up, and like, oh no, what does Moon have to deal with now?
Those were the most fun to write for me. Just because I made them like I just kind of like I'm just going to do whatever I want to do in this world and just make it a very, very strange place.
Non-human protagonists for the most part. I mean, there are some beings which are almost human, but Moon certainly isn't human in the end. Although he can sometimes pretend to be, and it's like I get them and I dig them, and as you said, I hope more people will try them.
Yeah,
just to see your range. Maybe since now that people have picked up the Witch King and the forthcoming Queen Demon, they can see that through line from the Raksura to there as far as having interesting non-human protagonists.
Yeah, that's just I just got to this point. I think humans are boring. I'm just going to write non-human protagonists. So
sorry, Sean, I crowded you out of that. Go ahead.
No, you're okay. There's a question in chat about casting. I'm gonna read it, but I think I'm not quite understanding it. But maybe I can get us to talk about casting. They're asking about casting in Murderbot, and it asks if you had a picture of I think they mean like for Murderbot, an idea for who would become Murderbot. But I don't know how much involvement in casting you really had. Because I guess that could be your secret for all we know.
I didn't really have a picture. I'm not really good at picking actors for characters. And sometimes when I do, the character starts out looking like a particular actor, and then the more I write it, the more it kind of stops looking like that and starts looking like a new person. And so yeah, the involvement in casting, it was I saw a lot of what they were doing but that's not, I mean, casting is a whole profession in itself that I don't know how to do. So I was not very involved in there except kind of talking about what the performance would be like and things like that.
So you did have input on kind of how you thought Murderbot should be presented in screen.
Yeah, yeah.
That question, by the way, is from someone by the name of, and I apologize if I get your handle incorrect, but Jekka Jade. And hopefully I understood your question, and you got the answer you were looking for. Um, well, we're getting pretty close to our time here,
Alas.
and so one of the questions that came from Stephen Geigen Miller, which is basically a lead in right to our final two quick questions. We've got Queen Demon coming up in October. And then the big question would be, what are you working on past that point, if you're allowed to tell us?
I finished another novella and turned it in, and I don't think they've announced it yet. So that'll be announced soon. And the next thing I'm going to work on is a third Witch King book, which will
Oh,
be
goody.
yeah, it'll be called Hierarch. So I need to start that. I'm still a bit behind, but I was in Europe for 2 weeks, which was fabulous. And so I'm still kind of recovering from. I did had a family event and then did a convention. So in Croatia, in the Netherlands, and then Croatia. So I'm kind of recovering from that and getting ready to start this book.
Exciting. A question just popped up since you'd mentioned you were working on another novella. Are you particularly drawn to the novella length, or do you have any particular love of that, or is that just a natural occurrence?
It's kind of natural. It's like sometimes I think that I'm at a point now where I don't have to worry so much about length. The publisher is willing to take a novella or a novel. So I just worry about what story I'm going to tell. And some stories are it's just not that long. I think I almost start wondering for a fantasy novel, I think my natural word length is more like 120,000 words, somewhere in there. And for science fiction, it really seems to be shorter. It seems to be more 50 to 60,000 words. So, which is not technically a novella, but since the Murderbot, I'm not gonna, if a Murderbot is nominated for more awards, I'm not gonna accept the nominations for it. Unless it's something I haven't got before, then I'll accept it. But so I don't have to really worry about those technical word counts. And they're just basically in there because like it's not fair for a full length 120,000 word novel to compete with a 30,000 word piece of short fiction on the same basis. You just can't compare them. So
Very different. That a question came from Space Valkyries, by the way. Thanks for the question. Okay, last question, because you have a life. And that's where can folks find you if they'd like to find you in your work?
I'm on Blue Sky under marthawells.com, and I'm on Instagram as Martha Wells Writer. I'm on God, what's it called? Dream With as Martha Wells. And those are the only places I am now. There's a bunch of people on Facebook that pretend to be yes, fantasy and science fiction writers and to try to get money out of people for whatever, but I am not on Facebook.
Well, perfect. Well, Martha, thank you very much for taking time out of your life to come talk to us. And I know both Paul and I have the same sentiment, but huge congratulations to all of the success that you're having. It is really great to see.
I'm so delighted. I've said this half a dozen times to you now, Martha, but I'm so delighted people finally discovered your work and are appreciating it.
Well, thank you so much. And Paul, I really appreciate your support all this time, basically. So thank you so much. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
You're more than welcome to come back. I don't know why it took so long. I don't know what's going on with us. We're idiots.
Reality.
Reality is hard.
All right, folks. So this is the slow decline of the show now. No, just kidding. This is the end of the show. For folks who'd like to let us know what you thought about this episode, or you have any questions or thoughts or what have you, skiffyandfanty@gmail.com. You can also get to the Discord on Patreon. You can talk to us about the show, any show, or about anything, really, about books, whatever you like. We're on Blue Sky, Threads, Mastodon, YouTube, whole bunch of other places. skiffyandfanty.com/skiffythings is the where you can find that. We're here every Friday, 7 p.m. Central, for our live show at twitch.tv/alphabetstreams. And then if you like what we do, please spread the word. Tell your friends about us. Only nice things, because just be nice. Be more nice. World's too mean. And support us. Patreon.com/skiffyandfanty if you're so inclined.
Speaking of which, I'd like to thank some of our Patreon supporters. Andrea the Alluring, Cameron the Chthonic, Carolyn the Benevolent, Carrie the Divine, Chris the Candescent, yes, we gave them all titles, Dan the Transient, Daniel the Cultured, David the Debonair, JC the Jocular, Jeff the Gracious, Joseph the Jovial, Juan the Junctional, KB the Kind, Karen the Kickass, Kat the Chematic, Matthew the Magnificent. Thank you. Kinematic. And Matthew the Magnificent.
And also Paul the Pious, Phoebe the Eloquent, Robin the Bold, Ryan the Resilient, Sarah A. the Sensational, Sarah E. the Sublime, and Sarah O. the Rapturous, Scott the Gentleman, Stephen the Strange, Tari the Thorough, Tanya the Triumphant, Trish the Imperturbable, and Victor the Valiant. So thank you all, supporters. Really, really appreciate it. I'm at SeanDuke.net. I'm Alphabet Streams, where I do other stuff on Twitch. SeanDuke.net/DukeThings if you want to find all my nonsense.
And you can find me, Paul, ubiquitously on the internet, except for in fascist duchies, kingdoms, and baronies, as Prince Justin with a V.
Okay. As required by the Skiffy and Fanny bylaws, I need to end this by making it happy. And that is that, Paul, in honor of you for being such a great supporter of Martha Wells' career, I am fast-tracking every new book from Martha Wells directly into your brain by a USB implant in the back of your neck.
I appreciate that, Sean.
You're welcome.
It's really service.
And on that note, happy ending, and see you. If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.